Hi, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something which actually is an answer, or hopefully an answer, to a question that lots of people are asking. One of the big news, and frankly, there are lots of big news is today, these days, all over. But one of them, especially in the tech world, is about this whole testimony that a whistleblower is offering in the US, UK, and a few other countries against her former employer, Facebook. Now, while it seems quite clear that there's a lot of wrongdoing that seems to have been happening in that company, the question is that what happens post Facebook? I mean, there's a lot of bad things, but then these social networks also can enable us to connect, to make relationships, to reconnect with people whom we knew so many years back, to get jobs, to find new friends. And so, what happens post Facebook? So before we get to that, I do believe that this is a very pivotal moment in tech, and especially for these large platforms or these large networks. And for that, I want to take you back a long time back, uh, decades back, and tell you a story about tobacco, about cigarettes. And actually, in the 20th century, so the last century, the two biggest industries, if you think about it, or at least the two most profitable industries, were big oil and big tobacco. Big tobacco especially minted profits out of an addiction. And it shaped culture. It made it cool for children and adults to smoke. And for years, for decades, actually, the tobacco majors, the big guys, knew that nicotine was addictive. Their internal research showed that. And that not only was it addictive, but it caused diseases far worse than just mere addiction. They kind of ignored that in pursuit of profits, and they actually brought out full-page ads saying that smoking was not a proven case for cancer, and they funded their own research with favorable outcomes. They created new products, targeted new segments, children, women. If you remember, Virginia Slims had this very famous advertising campaign saying, "You've come a long way, baby." And and this party was continuing until actually a whistleblower came out of a large tobacco company called the Brown and Williamson Tobacco Corporation, exposed the industry's secrets, and actually revealed to the world what the industry always knew, that smoking was addictive and it could kill. And then this whole campaign became, and smoking has actually considerably reduced, though not stopped, and it has reduced even more sharply in younger people, the youth. Now, actually, in many ways, we are seeing a big tobacco movement starting to happen in Facebook. Now, think about Facebook. The whistleblower, she alleges that Facebook chose profits over safety, much like in tobacco. And she says that Facebook tweaked its news feed, which is its core product, and more than 2 billion people see it every day, to make it far more attractive to advertisers, but in that process, to amplify divisive content. Divisive and inflammatory content in countries like Myanmar, Sri Lanka, in India, which is the largest base for Facebook, possibly the January 6th insurrection in the US, the Capitol being mobbed, etc., was coordinated on Facebook. Facebook obviously denied it. Mark Zuckerberg said that her testimony, the whistleblower's testimony, didn't make sense, illogical, was not true. But this did not, frankly, impress the US Congress, which is now mulling very strict legislation, and hopefully they do it. And therefore, the big tobacco movement would come to companies like Facebook. A lot of people say, in fact, that the whole rebranding of Facebook to Meta is a distraction, is something which Zuckerberg has done so that people start kind of is distracting attention from all the issues which are happening in Facebook. Now, if that be the backstory, what happens next? I mean, would a global tech lash throw the baby out with the bathwater, all the good stuff also, which social networks, as I said, give us? Now, what is happening is that if you think about it, these kind of networks today, the Facebooks and the Twitters of life, are what are called Web 2.0 networks. Before that were the Web 1.0, like the Yahoos and the MSNs. And the way they made money was that people would put banner ads or advertise, much like they did in physical magazines. advertisers would do that. Web 2.0 took it to a completely new level where data was sliced, diced, very sharply targeted demographically, psychographically, and actually sold to advertisers. Google started it, and then Facebook perfected it in many ways, and a bunch of others are also doing this. And therefore, we kind of lived in these walled gardens which have been created by these tech majors, and advertisers, want information about us to target their own products, and that's what Web 2.0 is all about. So really, the entire story of this data slicing, dicing, selling, the Cambridge Analyticas, etc., has actually happened because of the business model which powers Web 2.0. This business model of exchanging data for money. So what next? If this is not sustainable, if there's this backlash, if all these bad things are happening, what next? What next is probably what is called Web 3.0, or the decentralized web. The World Wide Web, WWW, when it was started, was actually envisaged as a P2P or a peer-to-peer network of computers where you connect and talk directly with each other. And that's how it started, a federated, decentralized entity. Everyone was equal. But soon the web started centralizing. And these big, massive centralizing companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, etc., created, as I said, their own spaces, their own walled gardens, and they became bigger and bigger and bigger, and the small guys kind of just started falling off. And then Google developed AdWords, which was like the biggest money-making invention this century. And Google's revenues went from 2.7 billion from 87 million to 2.7 billion in 3 years, and now it's a $1 trillion company, a $1 trillion valuation, more than a $1 trillion valuation company. In fact, it has recently reached 2 trillion. And so the internet has been monetized. So what is Web 3.0? Web 3.0 primarily, well, there's a technology change, but it's primarily a business model change. It's a different business model construct, a different philosophy, which actually promises to return the internet back to its roots, to the hands of users. And so there are two parts to Web 3.0. One is, and this is important, one is that it will allow explicit consent over your data. And so you sell parts of yourself knowingly for services that might come to you. And this is an initiative which is now being aided by GDPR and various other regulation which is coming in. The other part, as if not more important, is and what is driving the right of this whole new wave of the creator economy is that the creators of the content in the new networks will get a portion of the revenue generated by the networks, unlike now where the platform takes everything. So, it's the pictures we post, it's the videos we post, it's the clever comments that we post, which actually bring other people in, which actually fuels the network and actually brings the advertisers and the money in. But the money is all taken by the networks. What if a portion of that money, large portion of that money, was shared by to the actual creator? And that is what this new creator economy, which will be fueled by Web 3.0, which will actually be equal to Web 3.0. Some people are now calling it the metaverse, by the way. That's a different story. And basically the technology that this leverages are inherently decentralized peer-to-peer technologies like blockchains, for example, and these are enabled by digital currency microtransactions. So, that's how with cryptocurrency, you kind of make these payments happen. And by the way, this revolution has already started. I started noticing this about 3-4 years back, with the small Web 2.0 to Web 3.0 startups all over the world, including in India. In fact, there's one in India which Mr. Anand Mahindra has put his personal investment in, called Go Social. But the revolution actually has the 3.0 revolution. There are networks like Patreon, for example, for artists, which you might have heard of. Substack for writers. There are writers making lots of money out of by connecting directly to their end customers or end readers. Shopify for e-commerce, which is actually decentralizing e-commerce and is probably Amazon's largest competitor. Etsy for craftspeople. And so these new 3.0 kind of startups are starting to happen. And the big boys are recognizing this change. And YouTube and even our arch nemesis, Facebook, is signaling a change to its business model. Amazon has bought Twitch, which is kind of a gaming 3.0 play. And Facebook is now actively encouraging creators. In fact, it says in the new metaverse with its Meta company, creators will be the center. Let's see. And so a lot of this new activity has started happening, fueled by this techlash, as well as these new technologies, as well as the emergence of this new creator economy, where creators want to be rewarded and basically justifiably so for the content that they put in. And so maybe some of these things are at the same stage where, if you've seen the movie where Facebook was when Zuckerberg sketched out the algorithm on his dorm wall. But the big tobacco moment, I think, for the Web 2.0 networks, the big social networks and the platforms has come. And this will give rise to hopefully more democratic, more open, more decentralized, more sharing Web 3.0, and will take the web back to its benevolent democratic roots. Well, I guess one can always dream.